I'd be lying if I didn't agree that House of the Dragon Season 3's debut was difficult to watch. I mean, we had 2 whole years to prepare for Jacaerys Targaryen's tragic demise in the Battle of the Gullet, but nobody imagined the showmakers would alter the minute details leading up to his death. But I guess when you root for a black-haired Targaryen, you really are the one playing the Game of Thrones. Either way, Prince Jacaerys flew into the battle on dragonback like a Targaryen, died at sea like a Valyrian, and was brave like a Strong. Sadly, this tragic ending was overshadowed by one particularly nasty scene, which I really thought was a random AI image making the rounds on social media, until I saw it unfold with my own eyes. Yep, I'm indeed talking about Aemond kissing his own mother. Now, I know that the Game of Thrones universe has done more than enough to desensitize us toward incest. I mean, Rhaenyra married her own uncle, for God's sake. But kissing your own mother? That is unhinged even by Targaryen standards. I doubt I'll ever not be uncomfortable at the thought of it, because what in the Oedipus Rex was happening? But Aemond's growing madness has been teased for a long time now. While I feel bad for Alicent to have literally gone through so much sexual trauma, there's actually a reason why Aemond even dared to make this move. So without wasting another moment, let's discuss what that creepy kiss actually is, and what it means for both of their characters in the upcoming episodes of House of the Dragon Season 3.
So courageous. But I cannot lose you as I did Echo.
What exactly happens in this diabolically incestuous kissing scene? Well, pure shock value is truly a funny concept, or else why would we be talking about a freaky-ass scene when the episode gave us a raging sea battle, a rogue wild dragon, endless dragon fire, and the death of a beloved prince? After Aegon fled from King's Landing with the help of Lord Larys, Prince Aemond did not waste a second in claiming the Iron Throne after naming himself as the de facto king. But in case you don't remember, the previous season ended with the Dowager Queen Alicent visiting the Queen of the Blacks in Dragonstone to secretly broker a deal that would not only end the war but also stop the bloodshed. According to her deal with Rhaenyra, Alicent would open the gates to King's Landing so the Blacks could take the Iron Throne for themselves, and if Alicent sacrificed her eldest son Aegon, then Rhaenyra would allow the Dowager Queen to safely leave the city with her daughter Helaena and her granddaughter Jaehaera. In the first episode of Season 3, we see Alicent sneaking back into the Westerosi capital city and running to the throne room after finding out that Aegon has fled the city. Because the responsibility of protecting the throne now falls on Aemond, he was rather resolute that he would not leave the city and go to Harrenhal to join his uncle and Sir Criston Cole at Riverrun to find Daemon. But of course, in order for her plan to work out, Alicent has to make her arrogant son leave King's Landing any way possible. So she strategically coaxes him by expressing her ardent motherly love by telling him that he is the one who deserves to be king. Creepily enough, Aemond responds to this sudden show of warmth by kissing his mother on the lips, which even leaves Alicent all weirded out and scared. But she doesn't really let it show on her face and awkwardly smiles as her son agrees to leave for Harrenhal, leaving King's Landing undefended, and Alice reeling. At this point, the Dowager Queen of the Greens really has no other choice. Both her sons were ruining her deal. With Aegon on the run and Aemond ruling the Iron Throne, Alicent will not be able to hand over Aegon to Rhaenyra, and everyone knows that Aemond would rather watch King's Landing burn before bending the knee to Rhaenyra. So clearly, Alicent knew just what to do in order to butter Aemond up and push him out of King's Landing. But I'm sure even she did not see that problematic kiss coming her way. Why did Aemond kiss his mother? Well, in short, that dude is a nut with severe mommy issues, and we all knew that since the very beginning. We've first-handedly experienced Aemond's impulsive and abrasive nature at multiple points, but kissing his mom really is the most unexpected stunt he's pulled yet. The kiss arrives after years of emotional tension, resentment, and buried feelings that the series has quietly been building around Aemond's character, and while it definitely was unsettling, this scene actually reveals far more about Aemond's fears than his desires. Honestly, I think that Aemond's trauma as a child who was constantly bullied by his older brother and his general pressure of being the second son in feudal society, leaving him to prove his worth more than anyone else, makes sense why he rolled down the Freudian lane. If you remember, King Viserys' health had already started deteriorating when Aemond was a teenager, and he was barely there by the time the second prince was an adult. So, he was an absent father in the most traditional sense, especially for Aemond. On the other hand, Aemond's mother was a distant woman who mostly focused on Aegon. That is, only when she had the time. Moreover, Aemond has always been jealous of his older brother and wanted him dead so he himself could become the king. This is mainly because he wanted revenge for the emotional trauma he'd endured as a young Targaryen who was constantly mocked for not having a dragon and always overlooked. In fact, Aemond even wanted to marry his sister Helena, but his mother ensured that Aegon ended up marrying their sister, even if he never wanted to. What I'm trying to say is, Aemond always felt Aegon did not deserve whatever he received, only because he was the firstborn son, and that's why he always wanted what belonged to his older brother. More importantly, Aemond would often find sexual comfort in the arms of an older woman at the brothels of King's Landing, and when Aegon found out about that, he made sure to publicly humiliate his very naked brother in a very vulnerable moment. This just had to backfire, because Aegon has always buried his feelings, and held on to his grudges, so this scene he shares with Alicent has all of it just showing up in the most disturbing manner. The writers of the show have been building Aemond's character to have an Oedipus complex for a very long time. For those who don't know, I'm basically referring to the Greek tragedy of a young man who unwittingly ends up killing his father just so he can marry his mother. But in this case, instead of Viserys, it was Aegon who stood in Aemond's way as he craved his mother's love and validation. That's exactly why the kiss comes after Alicent reveals that she believes Aemond should have been the king instead of Aegon, thus leading his feelings to rise to the surface. In that sense, I think Aemond kissed her after believing that he's finally claimed the reward he spent so many years working for. As strange and off-putting as it is, the kiss is his truest sense of achievement, and it will definitely establish a sense of hubris in him for the rest of Season 3.
She'll certainly fail.
Every one of my miseries is of his making.
Ryan Condal believes that Aemond is operating from a place of fear. So according to the showrunner, Aemond is actually scared. Right from the very start of the season, we see him sitting on the Iron Throne, which really is just enormous pressure resting on his shoulders because he knows that the war is escalating, and Rhaenyra is preparing her response as her dragons are now capable of destroying King's Landing. This basically means that if the Blacks arrive at the Red Keep, Aemond will most likely die, and he knows that. I think Ryan Condal's interpretation sort of changes things up a bit, as we have always seen how Aemond spends much of the series being confident, disciplined, and authoritative. Yet beneath that armor is just a deeply insecure man-child who spent his entire life chasing approval. His childhood was shaped by neglect, his rivalry with Aegon, and just a relentless need to prove himself. So becoming Prince Regent definitely gave him that power, but it didn't erase any of those wounds. If anything, the responsibility has definitely intensified them and made him a cutthroat tyrant.
You have no idea the sacrifices that were made to put you on that throne.
What does this mean for Alicent Hightower? Well, I was initially shocked that Alicent did not react to being kissed by her son, but I think she was just too horrified of what Aemond was truly capable of, and strategically chose not to give her true reaction away. She simply keeps saying the exact words that a mommy issue riddle Aemond has yearned to hear his entire life, and sends him away in the pretense of wanting to save his life. Even if Alicent's eyes are fully open during that awkward kiss, and her whole body shows that disgust, Aemond doesn't seem to notice. Instead, he very sincerely tells her how he would host a feast in her honor in Black Heron's Hall after putting his uncle's head on a spike. As charming as he was trying to be, we could see Alicent regretting all her life choices after her kiss with Aemond and his bloodthirsty proclamations. Of course, the whole thing is also a bit sad because, through his interactions with Sylvie at the brothel, we know that Aemond just wants to be held, loved, and listened to by a maternal figure, and Alicent clearly did not give him much in the way of motherly affection. So now she's paying up. According to Olivia Cook's interview with Screen Rant, the actress who plays the Dowager Queen also agrees just how weird and disgusting the kiss was for her character. In fact, she thinks Alicent saw that as a bit of a failure on her part, and while her maternal instincts are shocking, it's really scary as well, because she knew that Aemond is a very dangerous man. This basically means that if Alicent had rejected that problematic affection from her son, it could have gotten her killed. She finally realized that she failed as a parent, and now her only hope was to play body chess with Aemond, so he would leave before Rhaenyra comes to King's Landing. At this point, Alicent is just a girl trying to survive. We already know Alicent finds Targaryen customs to be queer, even if she ends up marrying her son to her daughter. Even then, she's always loathed the history of incest within the Targaryens, so for her, being kissed by her son is simply traumatic. Even if she's been an emotionally distant mother, Alicent has had her own share of sexual trauma, be it performing the duty of a wife to a lord husband who's older than her father, or sharing a shameful relationship with the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. I guess Alicent being kissed by her adult son is now one of the most drastic results of her flawed parenting, and given how dangerous Aemond has grown up to be, Alicent can never reason with him again. Of course, for Aemond, it's coming from having suffered a shit ton of psychological damage rather than acting on sudden impulse. Aemond doesn't really know how to show affection in any other way because Alicent rarely expressed physical affection or emotional openness with her children. That absence, combined with Aemond's isolation and obsession with control, has warped his understanding of love and devotion. Even Ewan Mitchell, the actor who plays Aemond, believes that his character has a very skewed perception of what love is, as he lacked it while growing up, and so he doesn't particularly know how to show it. Because Aemond never had much love as a child, and really had to learn to love himself, this is where his ego and his vanity stems from. According to Mitchell, if a child isn't embraced by the village, they will burn it down to feel its warmth, and that's why Aemond was on a warpath. He's finding his power through Vhagar, and really making a notorious name for himself. As Mitchell says, in that moment he feels like he's kind of risen to a position where he can comfortably call himself the king, and with that, maybe he feels like he can shoot his shot with Alicent in a really weird way, just to seek her validation. Well, I've also read theories on Reddit where this scene is being called a farewell kiss that's not necessarily Freudian in nature, because Aemond knows deep down that Alicent is lying and simply wants him to leave her sight. That kiss, apparently, is Aemond's way of proclaiming his love to his mother before flying off to a battle that can get him killed, just because she told him he deserved to be king and gave him the validation of approval he yearned for, even if it may be fake. I honestly think this interpretation is just a load of BS, but do with it what you will. Well, that brings us to the very end of this video. Jaime Lannister clearly ain't got nothing on our boy Aemond. Having said that, what's your interpretation of Aemond kissing his own mother? Let us know about your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below.